Hello, and welcome to a conversation about resume writing. My name is Noelle, and my title is the Associate Director of Career Education at the Center for Career Development. Very much a mouthful. But we'll spend the next 15 or 20 minutes talking about creating resumes, specifically creating strong resumes and creating tailored content. When I am not in this little Zoom square, I am working at the Yawkey Center. So the Center for Career Development is located on the sixth floor. That's where my office is. We are a team of about 20, and we do a whole bunch of programming and resource creation. The picture here shows the first thing on this list, which is resume and cover letter reviews. So we have drop-in hours during the week for students to come and have a resume or a cover letter or a LinkedIn profile reviewed. So after you watch this, if you're working on your resume at the same time, maybe that you're watching this and you'd like someone to review it and give you some feedback, those drop-in hours are listed on our website. We do workshops, we do virtual workshops. We have faculty who ask us to come in. So you may see me or my team in person, show up to your class one day. We do individual career meetings. So for students who have specific questions, we do 30-minute appointments virtually and in person. And you can make those appointments through Handshake. And then our team plans employer events, career fairs, mock interviews, virtual panels, just a whole bunch of other programming. And all of that programming ends up on Handshake. So if you're trying to think of like a way to get started or find out more, Handshake is a great platform. I also listed here our website is just careers.bu.edu. And that's where all of our resources that I'll share today, plus more, can be found there. So if it's 11 o'clock at night and we don't have any appointments, but you have a question about maybe interviewing, you'll find it there. And for our conversation today, we're really just talking about formatting basics. We'll spend just a short period of time on that. And then really figuring out ways to strengthen and tailor your content depending on the positions that you're applying to. And feel free, like you can pull up your resume at the same time that you're seeing this and pause and jump back and forth. Use this in whatever way would be helpful. So we'll talk about resumes. I just wanted to make a quick distinction between resumes and CVs because sometimes people use them interchangeably, but they're actually two different documents. So resume is a shorter document. It's more concise. Usually it's one page. Most of the time, if you're applying to jobs or internships in industry, you're using a resume. If you're applying to work in research, in a research position or a research facility, if you're applying to be a professor or and work in academia, then a CV is usually what's encouraged. And there's no page limit. They're typically longer. They have like everything of everything that you've done. Um, and so today we'll focus on resumes. I think it's the majority of what you all will be using, but the CV does exist and we can talk about it in an appointment if that would be helpful. But a resume at its core, I think you all know this, but it's a marketing tool. It's it's your brand. It's the way that you're kind of funneling everything that you've done in your life onto one page and making it relevant to the audience that's reading it. And that is hard. If it doesn't sound hard to you, it is hard. And if it sounds hard, then I'm here to validate the fact that yes, it's hard. It's hard to engage in the storytelling of like, why are we a good fit? Why are we a good candidate? Who am I? That stuff is hard and oftentimes is not taught in a school setting. And so it's natural if you're really struggling to figure out like what is the overall story that I want to tell with my resume. But it's a helpful question to think about. So if you're here and you watch this video, you edit your resume, it's good to go. Make sure that you can answer the question, what is the story that you're trying to tell? And every person has a unique story. But if you can't figure out what that story is, then it'll get hard to kind of do your elevator pitch. It'll be hard to answer the interview question, tell me about yourself. And so if that question is challenging for you to answer, like what's the story that I want to tell, I'd encourage you to come and talk to us and let us help you craft that story. At like a very kind of nitty-gritty level, the goals of a resume are really to catch the reader's attention. Uh, Recruiters, HR managers, like people who are reading resumes are not spending minutes, they're spending seconds. And so really being able to figure out how do I have good content, but how do I have a format that's easy to read and easy to digest? Beating the applicant tracking system or ATS feels like it's a goal that everyone's got to be aware of. ATS, applicant tracking systems are just everywhere across industries, but especially in any industry that's technical. And so really figuring out how to create a resume that will help you get past those initial screeners is important. And so to a basic conversation around formatting. So on the right-hand side, there is a resume that is one solid template. So there are a couple of different ways that you can format a resume, but Google would allow you to believe that there are 500 different ways to format your resume because there are hundreds of different templates. And I really am here to tell you that the buffet of templates that you have to choose from is not as broad. You don't have to use the version that you see here, but this version is very much like a line to the left, a line to the right. It's consistent. There's bold, so the things that are bold, like pop out at you. There's italicized font, so you can see, the names of positions are in bold, the names of organizations are in italics. There's no pictures. There's no colors. It's very boring. It's black and white. The margins are there. Things aren't scrunched together, right? There's a little bit of breathing room. Um, Something that's a little bit harder to notice here because there aren't actual dates is that within each section, so within work experience, leadership, and education, um, entries are structured in reverse chronological order. So you always want to make sure within each section, you're starting with either the present opportunity or the most recent opportunity, and then moving backwards in time. And then, once again, you may not notice this by looking at the template here, but this is a PDF. I'd encourage you to start in whatever tool is most helpful, Google Docs, Word, however you're going to start, and convert it once. So start with one tool and then convert it to a PDF and then submit the PDF. The the challenges on a back end side of things come when you start in one tool, you convert it to a Google Doc, and then Google Doc 2, you download it as a Word document, and then convert it to a PDF. Like along the way, the formatting gets weird, the back end formatting is weird, and so start with one tool, convert it to a PDF, and then call it a day. This is really just an example of something not to do. I think there are many templates on Google or any other, like Word has tools, just there are lots of um, different websites that will provide you templates. This one has a photo. You're never going to want to include your photo. You don't want columns on your resume because that messes with the way that an applicant tracking system reads your resume. Graphics throw off the reading of your resume. So this is just an example of something that you don't. If your resume looks like this, just take a minute and say farewell to that version and create a new one. And then you will have noticed, but on the previous version that we saw, there was some kind of a header. So the person's name, the contact info, their education, their experience, and their experience, you can have multiple sections. I would encourage all of you to really, really be uh, intentional about choosing class projects that are relevant to the positions that you're applying to. It is very common to have course projects, especially because you're a student. The majority of your time is spent in the classroom. And so you can separate a project section and title it Project Experience, and then a separate section called Work Experience or Internship Experience, and then a skills section. The previous resume, you'll notice, and I'll go back, had the skills section at the bottom. That's totally fine. I'd actually encourage you, if you're applying to technical positions, to just move the skills section to be under education. When anyone's looking at a resume, they're reading from top to bottom. And so the quicker you can get their attention, the better. And so your skills section will help them get a better idea of what tools you've used before. And then optional sections, some of these may relate to you, some of them won't. If you are bilingual, trilingual, having your languages listed under your skill section makes total sense. If you've got volunteer experience that you're really proud of and that's relevant to what you're applying to, you can have a separate section for volunteer experience. If you've got certifications, licenses are maybe not as applicable here. If you've been published, if you have military service. So these are all totally optional. But if you're sitting here and you're like, can I add X, Y, or Z section? If it's not listed here and you're still wondering, reach out and ask us because most of the time the answer is yes, as long as it's going to showcase a skill of yours that is relevant to the positions that you're applying to. So that was Resume 101 when it comes to formatting. We're going to talk about content because I think most folks, the formatting they get, they're like, I see it, I can understand it, I can replicate it. The content is a little bit more challenging. And so I'd encourage you to think about the fact that you don't have to have one resume for your entire life. And in actuality, you might be in a position where, whether it's for internships or for jobs, you have maybe two or three different kinds of positions that you're applying to. And so you'll have two or three different kinds of resumes to use. So this idea is called tailoring. So tailoring your resume to the position that you're applying to. And I call this a resume buffet. Um, there's this concept, I'm always talking about food, but this idea that I encourage almost everyone to have a resume buffet that is the one resume that you're never going to use to apply to a position, but it's going to have everything that you've ever done. So, educational experiences, volunteering, babysitting, courses that you've taken, internships. I worked at an ice cream store. That's going on my resume buffet. So that is a resume that's going to be very long. And what you're going to do is you're going to be able to pull from it when you're creating tailored resumes. Of course, you don't have to have a resume buffet, but sometimes there's a course project maybe you're working on right now that you don't think is relevant to an internship that you're applying to, but maybe a year from now, or maybe 6 months from now, you may be interested in applying to an internship that's related more to this current project. And so adding the project to your resume will allow you to front load some work. So you're adding all this content, and then you can really just pick and choose when you're ready to tailor resumes. So that's a suggestion. Um, this first point here around like highlighting things, experiences, skills, um, is important and really focusing on this word relevant. So if you leave today with nothing else, I would hope that you would leave with this word relevant, always using it to ask yourself, when I'm tailoring my resume, when I'm adding something to it, is it relevant to the position I'm applying for? Not, is it important to me? Does it make me proud? Does it make me look impressive? Winning an Olympic medal is like incredibly impressive. But if you're applying for a machine learning position, it's not relevant. Is it cool? Maybe, but if you're putting on your gold medal, but you're not putting on your course projects because you don't have room because you have this gold medal on your resume, then that's not helpful. And so using that as your question, if you're like, oh, should I be adding something to my resume? If the answer is it is relevant to what I'm applying for, then yes, you can add it. Tailoring your resume also speaks to tailoring certain words and languages. So maybe you're adding certain projects or certain experiences as a way to tailor, but you can also be switching out different words. So if you're applying to software engineering positions as opposed to machine learning positions, as opposed to data analyst positions, what you'll want to do is pull up the internship or the job posting, and if you are in a position where you found maybe two or three different positions that you're interested in, pull them all up. You can feed them into an AI tool. I use ChatGPT a lot, but you can use an AI tool, feed the position descriptions in there and say, what are the five most common keywords that pop up? And maybe you do this for like 20 positions. But the whole goal is to figure out how are companies describing their positions and describing the skill sets of the people that they want to be a part of their team and making sure that you're using that same language. This takes, it takes a little bit of time. You can consider looking at a company's website and figuring out, are there keywords that pop up? Is there a tagline that they have? How do they, like, what is their personal brand? And then using that in your resume as well. And then the last point here, considering retitling some of your sections. So, if you're a student who has, a lot of course project experience, and it's a certain kind of course project experience. So, I mean, I use machine learning, so I'll do that again. But if a lot of your course projects are around machine learning, maybe the name of your section is not course projects or project experience, but maybe it's machine learning experience. So really figuring out, is there a grouping of your experiences that makes sense? And how do you quickly share that? And if it's work experience, if that's the best way to describe what you've done, that's great. But if you can get more specific, students who have done a lot of research, like their research projects, you can title a section, um, data science research experience or data analytics research experience. So, being creative in that way definitely makes sense. Using bullet points, we talked about kind of tailoring the language. This is just an overview, like in addition to the language that you're tailoring and that you're using, really making sure that you're painting a full picture, but it's a concise picture. So like one or two lines per bullet point makes sense. And really thinking about, if you can, quantifying what you've done. Sometimes adding numbers or percentages, it's not going to make sense and it's going to feel awkward and not genuine, and that's okay. But if you have the ability to say, I increased something, I decreased something, even if you don't have percentages, just using those words, I increased, I decreased, um, I uh, if you're working with data sets, how big is the data set? Um, what kind of data is it? What's the tool that you're using to analyze the data? Where is the data stored? So just all of those things, like being specific, but being specific in a way that you're not telling the full story that's three or four or five lines of a bullet point to really get your point across. And then you're never going to use like personal pronouns. Your bullet points are not full sentences, so they don't need a period at the end. You're not going to say, I, decrease latency by X, Y, and Z doing this thing. You're just going to start off those points with an action verb. And so to that point, so here's the breakdown of a bullet point. So you're always going to start with an action verb for all of your bullet points. And so right now you can pause, go over to your resume and make sure everything starts with an action verb. So supported, calculated, built, deconstructed, analyzed, all of those things. Then you're going to describe the task. So what did you analyze? What did you build? What did you deconstruct? Was this something you did weekly? Was it something you did for a month? Was it for a certain number of people, a certain size data set? So all of those specifics are in here. And then the last part is what was the result of that? And so sometimes, if for a course project, the result was like I submitted the project and I got a grade. Like it was required for me to do this, and so I did it. But any opportunity you have to step back just a little bit and think about what did this specific responsibility or task enable me to do or enable someone else to do? So how am I situating this within a larger mission or goal? And so, sometimes students they're working on a tool, they're creating a system in order to solve some bigger problem or in order to contribute to something. And so usually the transition words that you use are, I analyzed this data set so that um, my PI in the lab could make a proposal around a certain kind of new treatment or uh, or I'm analyzing this data in order to identify trends that could help a a company attract more customers. But ultimately, really thinking about why. And if you don't have this, that's okay. There's no need. Once again, you don't have to be awkward or not genuine. But if there is something bigger that you can speak to, I help to contribute to this larger thing, then add it right at the end. And so here's one example. So this like really brief analyze data to help improve sales forecasting. That's true. You start with an action verb, you talk about what you did. But this after really talks about like how did you analyze the data and what was the data? The word data is like all inclusive. There's data for third graders who, their levels all the way to data that's around like global banking. There's a lot of data. And so really being able to talk about what kind of data is it? How was I analyzing it? And is there like another percentage? Like to improve sales forecasting is fine, but if there's a way you can be more specific, here's an example of that. And then just one more example, cleaning and organizing data. Once again, like what's the size of this data? What was I using? You all are incredibly skilled in the tools that you know how to use. And so really being able to speak to that in these bullet points. So your skills section is going to say, I know SQL, I know Python, I know MATLAB, all of the things that you know. In the skills section, you'll list them. In your bullet points, though, you want to be able to contextualize how do I know SQL? Like, if everyone's learning Python, like where have I used it in a course project, in an internship, um, in volunteering, in a side project that I was doing, a personal project. So this after example will show you how to take skills that are listed in your skills section and helping someone understand how you've used them. And then just common mistakes I'll share, just for safety reasons, you never want to include your exact address. Whenever possible, really spelling out bachelor's, master's. Um, Sometimes sections just get a little bit disorganized, and there are ways to separate the skills section by languages that you know. So, if you know Spanish, if you know Russian, if you know Korean, like listing those languages in addition to other like programming languages that you know. Um, a lot of people include an objective section, which can be helpful in certain situations, but most of the time an objective section, it states repetitive information. So if you're saying, I'm a junior data science student studying at Boston University, interested in a certain kind of position. Well, you already you've already said that you go to Boston University. In the education section, you already said you're a data science student. Somebody knows that you're a junior, and they know you're interested in this position because you're applying to it. Like so that takes up real estate on your resume. And so I'd encourage you before you add an objective section, really think about Is it going to include new information that is relevant to whoever's reading it? And then, other than sitting by yourself in your room reviewing your resume, you can take advantage of these three options. So VMock is a tool that's free for all students and it provides instant online review. So it's an AI tool. You upload your resume and it gives you really detailed feedback. I mentioned drop-in reviews, resume reviews. You don't need an appointment. Um, Most semesters, they're Monday through Friday around lunchtime, but our website will have more specifics. And then the third is an appointment. So a 30-minute appointment that you can make through Handshake to talk to someone like me to get some more feedback. So thanks for listening. I know resumes are, I mean, it's the way that you start building career experience, and it can be really stressful to design one. But once you've got a strong resume, the ability for you to add and edit to it gets easier and easier. So hang in there, and maybe our paths will cross again.